Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 3, Episode 2 of Pennyworth. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So it does seem like I was kind of on the right path, thinking like all these storylines are going to ultimately converge, and does seem like that is the case. I mean, first and foremost, we're picking up with the Thomas and Martha conversation. Thomas is like, all right, we need to have this talk. It's like, it seemed Thomas was under the impression like he knew that her desk job was like a cover for working with Aziz. It's like, right, I know you're actually working pretty closely with the prime minister, but he still believed she had a desk job. It's like, no, you're an active field agent. She's like, my job is a desk job 99% of the time. I love that Martha's trying to justify that. She's just being like, she's thinking Thomas is overthinking things, but it is a thing of, yes, I am doing very, very important work, and yeah, I have to kind of be in the middle of some danger here and there, but even trying to say like, no, it's not like that. But for Thomas, it's like, you lied about it. But then even she's bringing up the point that Thomas keeps ignoring of like, wait, why does your dad know that about me? He's like, that's not the point. It's like, it's super the point because it's the main reason why your dad's here, but he's so caught up in his own feelings, like he's not 100% piecing that together. But to be fair, he's like, whatever you're associated with that, I want Martha to have nothing to do with it. That's why he's putting Patrick, his dad, in contact with Alfie. Which I also think it's interesting too. I just thought about this. It's like, all this time, I mean, the conversations could be there, but I'm like, maybe it's happening like off screen. No point in time. I mean, it's been 5 years, so maybe they're we don't know, like, considering his sister's like lifestyle and stuff like that, but I'm like, not unless she's not around. Bruce had no family, considering Thomas has a sister at this continuity, like, either, like, she just wasn't around, or something happened to her. Because, like, the last time we saw her is the lady that, Gully's wife, Alfie and them saw her and, Thomas's sister off. They were basically going to the U.S. So I think that's the last time we saw her, or really knew anything about what's up with her. So the fact is, his father hasn't really brought her up, and neither has Thomas. Once again, to be fair, it's been 5 extra years too, so a lot could change in that department. Either, like, once again, maybe she's not alive anymore, and we're just kind of skating over that, or it's just kind of like we don't really need to get into it. I check in with her from time to time to make sure she's not in any trouble. But considering all this Wayne Enterprise stuff, I'm just surprised. I mean, Thomas is a golden child. He's the one that's going to take over either way. So I guess it doesn't really matter, but you would still think his sister would come up in conversation, but regardless. But Martha ended up talking to Lucius about it, which he says, like, right, I don't talk to anyone about it, especially, friends, about like what he does, what they're mixed up in. And she kind of talks to him about it. He's like, I did not see you as the deceitful type. And she's like, no, it's good. He's like, it just shows that you're still human. The fact is that, I guess that she is lying about it, but also that she kind of feels weird and bad about the whole lying to Thomas thing, about having given this all up. So she was kind of asking for some advice, but Lucius and she even said, oh, we're cool. He's like, what's there not to be cool about? Like, I wonder what that was in reference to. I guess, like, it's like, I guess she's like, I'm putting you in this awkward position because I kind of, maybe it's kind of like you typically don't like getting too personal with stuff like that, and I kind of drew you into a very personal conversation. Or it's also like, I'm putting you in between a rock and a hard place, because even he's like, because Thomas even said, Lucius and Alfred know about this, don't they? She's like, no, well, yes, but it's like, they're trusted. He's like, trusted over me? You're a husband? So, yeah, that's going to be a slippery slope, especially because she does find, she's like, see, my job's it's not that dangerous, Thomas. And then she immediately finds herself in a situation where she almost gets killed. It's like, cool. I guess you could make the argument, it's like, man, you dance with death so much that sadly, it's like a final destination. It's a final destination situation of, I guess you make the argument your luck ran out, or just, unfortunately, you've avoided death so much just for us to know what your future holds. It's kind of even more heartbreaking in that regard, just because it's like, you've, I don't know why, because this is a Thomas and Martha we've really gotten to know, so it makes it even sadder, like, you know what the end result is, like what the end goal is. Yeah, the journey along the way is going to be wild, bumpy, and there's going to be some developments, but it's still sad knowing, because this is the Thomas and Martha we've gotten to know, so it makes it even more personal. Most times it's like, oh, they're his parents that we didn't get to know. Now we're going into our third season with these characters, so we've known them, so it makes it even more heartbreaking knowing, like, I don't know, specifically because I'm picturing this version of Thomas and Martha dead in that crime alley. It's like, oh, that's sad to know that, it's just like, you kind of would wish they were different characters, because you're like, right, because if they were, you wouldn't know what their future is, but it's like knowing, like, no matter what happens, what their end result is, what role they play in their son's eventual, like, trauma and pain and borderline psychotic break from reality. I mean, something's got to be a little off if you're running around dressed like a bat, right? So I don't know. It just makes it even sadder. Something I don't think about too much, but that just kind of like made it. Just talking about that just kind of flooded my head. I'm like, it just makes it even sadder. And maybe that's even the point why you spend so much time knowing Thomas and Martha, so that when they die, they aren't just strangers. So it's like, oh, it sucks. Bruce's parents died. It's like, no. You get to know Bruce's parents now, and they want that death to eventually, like, in this canon, whatever it is, it's like they want you to be thinking about that future of, like, it hurt. Like, this Thomas and Martha, it would legitimately bums me out thinking about the fact is what their future holds for no matter where this show ends up at the end of the day, when it does eventually come to an end, knowing that in their some far into their future, that's going to be their end result. I mean, maybe not even that far into the future. Even when they have Sam, it's like, once again, there's going to be complications and some developments on the way to kind of separate this from typical Batman canon, but still, regardless, I was about to say irregardless, but right, I was trying to remember how Martha got to the whole Sister Susie thing. Martha got there because Lucius said, like, it was a very specific fragrance of wood. It's like, oh, you're looking for someone that's hippie. It's like, well, a rich hippie. And I was like, oh, so Sister Susie. So I was like, so that's going to put you in direct course with Alfie and Dave Boy, who, after everything went down last episode, Aziz is like, turns out you got messed with, because this is Jessica's actual nanny. And you're like, okay, so someone showed up pretending to be the nanny. So, all right, so we got played with. Side note, the fact is, the real person, the fake nanny shows up, apparently she was an actress. I'm surprised that didn't kind of trigger a little something for Alfie. To be fair, it's been a couple years, but I still think that would have done something. But the fact is that, his previous, his fiance was an actress, so I thought that would have triggered something to some extent, but maybe not. That recently came up in something else. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, I won't spoil what it is. There was that story beat of like, oh yeah, someone hired to pretend to be someone. Yeah, I'm an actress. I got hired to pretend to be. Yeah, like that recently came up in something else. I mean, I guess even DC-wise, you can make the argument like, well, because I just know DC-wise, same thing happened with Ava's parents in Legends of Tomorrow. Like, they were paid actors, if I remember correctly. But it wasn't that. It was something else. Something that's actually currently airing at the same time that had kind of a similar thing. Either way, I'm just surprised that didn't trigger something. Also, I have to look into that. I remember looking something up related to the actress who played Esme, because I think it was something recent. I don't know if it was something I was currently watching, but I recognized an actress. I was like, oh, why does she seem so familiar? Looked into it, and I was like, oh, she's the actress who played Esme in Pennyworth. I just don't remember what off the top of my head what it was related to that I was like looking her up for. I don't remember the actress's name off the top of my head either. The movie My Policeman. Her name is Emma Corrin, the actress who played Esme, but that's what it was recently. Because I was like, she was in the movie. It's a movie coming out, I think, to Prime Video. It's that Harry Styles movie, My Policeman. But I had seen her in that, and I was like, why does she look so familiar? And I found out she was the actress who played Esme. Either way, that's why that kind of triggered that in my brain, because I was thinking about her recently, so I think that probably like connected those dots even more so. Either way. So, once again, kind of bringing together all the connective threads. I love Alfie could not find his gun. The bear that, oh god, that Sam picked up when she went over to her house with Thomas. I was thinking like, oh, the reason why Alfie wants that bear back is because his gun's actually hidden in there, isn't it? I was like, oh, that's because I was like, oh, she's got like, oh, there's hidden toys here. The moment that conversation came up, I'm like, oh, she doesn't end up finding her gun because he can't find it. But it's like, no, it seemed like that's not what happened. Apparently his mom is hiding his guns, which the guy that works for him, Chadley, is like, why is your mom hiding your guns? It's like, psychological warfare. She's trying to tell me to find a different line of work. And I'm like, I was like, I like that. I love how cheeky that is. I love that. But either way, Dave Boy's on Jessica protective duty, and I just love how that like fell apart while he was getting tea. She got nabbed. Like he has to go into this whole fight with the doctor, and she's like slipping back on the stairs. I was like, oh, that's gonna get nasty, isn't it? And I thought like when Dave Boy ended up killing that fake doctor, I was like, oh my god, he's gonna get to her in time, and he didn't. I was like, ooh. But it just seemed like, okay, she hit some like laundry at the bottom, so she's good. She's just kind of coming to a little bit. And I love the whole scene in the elevator, and the doctor's like, are you okay? He's like, what are you, a doctor? And he's like, yes. Well, in or out? And the guy's just standing there. He's like, and just Dave was like, fucking hell. I'm like, I love because you seem so crazy. You got Jessica behind you. You still got blood on your face. So yeah, like I can't blame the guy for being like, what the fuck is going on? You know, so I love that. But they ended up stashing Jessica at a very specific place with Sandra. And it's like, hey, so yeah, things aren't, yeah, like in no shape or form are things still kind of awkward between Sandra and Alfie. Obviously, I'm saying that sarcastically. It's like, oh wow, she's doing super well for herself, her plate. She's like, yeah, you know, maybe this costs a lot. I don't know. It's like, oh, she's doing super well. He's like, hey, I told you you ended up making it. And I love that. It's like, oh yeah, this is Ian. It's like, oh, are you a musician too? She's like, yeah, he's number 6 on the list. And he's like, oh, number 6, huh? That's 3 behind you. And Sandra's like, you pay attention? He's like, of course. You know, he references her song. You know, he's like, yeah. He basically was saying like it make candlesticks and stuff. He's like, yeah, it makes you. The song kind of makes you look at things a little differently. I think, you know, kind of being like almost, oh, you don't appreciate them, and now you do appreciate them a little bit more because the song kind of puts a different light to them. And I was like, I don't know if that's you just trying to make conversation, but also subtly referencing to the fact is you didn't always treat Sandra the way you should have. I even love Dayboy. Look at this place. This could have been you, Alfie, if you didn't fuck it up. It's just like, shut up. But yeah, they knew something was up with Jessica and they needed to clear her name, which Aziz is kind of like, right, I am going to have to put out like a, you know, essentially like a warrant for you. He's like, you know, it's all for show and stuff like that. It's like, well, you don't have to like get to threats and stuff. Let's investigate this. And then, we'll come in soon enough with, Jessica. It's like, oh, I hope you do. It's like, well, that's kind of thrown out the window by the end of the episode, but you know, we'll get to that when we get to it. But they're investigating Sister Susie because they're trying to find out, okay, so what's this all about? She has to have some connection in all of this. It's like, right, Jessica went to her and then all of a sudden comes home, kills her parents. Well, just by the guys the guy that Dave Boy ran into, plus the guys that asked the fake nanny, the actress who gave her the job, because she was like, she thought she was just she legitimately was helping return a daughter to her family. She didn't know anyone was going to get hurt. They stabbed her. Like, they kind of did a piss poor job. I guess they were going to make it look like an accident or like a mugging or something. I'm like, it's the CIA. You think you do a little bit of a better job of trying to kill someone, but it's like, I mean, every other situation, they were ready to pop heads. So that's why I'm like, I don't know why they went through the trouble of stabbing. Not unless she's still playing a role. I don't know. Not unless they delegated that to someone else they hired. Well, no, because she made it sound like it was the Americans that came after her in that regard. So either way, that all... those being like, okay, so it's government people behind this, but why? What's their role in all of this? Because these people have to be CIA. So they went to Sister Susie looking for information, and going on Lucius's lead, so does Martha, and we find out like, which the moment Sister Susie rolled up on Martha, I was like, damn it. But Martha dodged out of the way. He's like, hey! I was like, oh man, you got away from that. I was like, man, I thought she was going to knock you out for sure, which she ultimately does, which sadly sucks for her because she did that. She didn't have Martha's protection to put down the CIA agents before they blew a hole in poor Sister Susie said, well, I say poor, but she basically sold her followers out to the CIA so they could experiment on her followers, and that's what this is all about. In fact, obviously, once again, this ties into everything with Patrick as well, because the person that's with him, Victoria, she, once again, the way she was acting last episode, it's like, she definitely has to be a CIA agent. She has to specifically be Patrick's, like, handler or something like that. Once again, the way she talked to him and everything, it's like, that has to be the case. So, he's after, I guess they said the scientist's name last episode, and I just didn't remember it, Dr. Glubb. He's the one behind all of this. Now, once again, whether this has any correlation or connection to the superpowered people, that in itself, like all the, like the guy from the first episode, them trying to do what they did with Gully, it could simply be a situation of, no, like that might be the actual B plot. That, like, everything else being the A plot related, or it could be like, oh, this is the first chunk of the season is mainly about this, and the back half of the season is mainly about that, or maybe there's a correlation there, because once again, I do still believe it is probably like, in this universe, this is kind of like the new arms race to try and get, like, some powered weapon people type of thing, well, people with enhancements type of situation, so. I also think it's so interesting that immediately Sister Susie was like, oh yeah, they're CIA, you mean those CIA agents. So, wait, you knew they were CIA? She's like, I didn't know for sure, but what's the difference? I'm like, that's the thing of like, you're doing such a piss poor job because I guess you fit the type American, international barking order status and showing up with a whole bunch of money. It's like, oh, you have to be CIA. It's like, just a Joe Schmo of a cult leader knows that you're most likely to CIA, so that kind of shows you, I think you kind of doing a piss poor job. I guess it doesn't matter. She went along with it regardless and used her followers. And she's like, yeah, but I don't think too much of it. It's like, well, if you did think much of it, if you didn't really think too much of it, why aren't your followers here? Why are you letting them go? Why are you about to leave? It's like, yeah, she's trying to divorce herself from this entire situation now that it's turned into the whole Thistles situation, everything with Jessica. It's like, yeah, let's kind of get away from all that. And Martha now knows that there's a connection to all of this because the camera they were using to record the test results, the experiments, has Wayne Enterprise on it. So you're like, cool. So, Thomas isn't going to he wanted Martha not involved in all this. She, just by the very nature of her work, she's involved, which, circling back, I love that Thomas went to Alfred about it. It's like, right, as a friend, I'm legitimately ask you about the nature of Martha's work, which he knows, but he chose not to say anything because it's right. This seems like it's a conversation between a husband and wife. I would just say, trust your wife. And it's like, yeah, your husband came to visit me about your line of work. And she's like, fuck. And he's like, don't worry. I kind of kept, mum's the word. So I didn't really say anything. But she's like, yeah, they're going to have a conversation, especially now that his family's neck deep in all of this. So, because essentially he got involved because the drug in particular could be used for other things. Obviously, the main purpose is, like everything, it is like, like the military applications are basically making more. You can basically control people, like, kind of dull that human, like, make them, as Thomas basically put it, better killing machines, essentially, on the battlefield. So, but it seems like it had other applications, and being the business mogul that is, Patrick's like, yeah, I'm running Wayne Enterprises the best I could. So I don't know whether, like, he went to Dr. Glubb first, or whether the CIA approached him and then had him approach Dr. Glubb. Glubb. I don't know which ended up happening first. It kind of doesn't matter because the waters, Jesus, I was butchering that. The waters are so muddied now that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's just all about, yeah, this is the situation we're in. So, once again, keeping Martha out of this, he gave him Alfie's number. It's like, cool, let that be that. Alfie does somewhat, really quickly, just add in there for some levity. We do know that Alfie found out that, he was like, yeah, Mom lied about going to work with Thomas and Martha, that he was, that she was looking after Sam, but he was like, why are you all dressed up? She's like, yeah, I'm just going there. It's like, yeah, but what about that rose? She's like, yeah, Sam picked it, so that's why I'm wearing it. She's like, how about you focus on your investigation, stop investigating me? But she went on a date, and it seemed lovely at first, And even Chadley was like, yeah, your mom has needs and stuff. He's like, I probably should stop having this conversation. But then he adds on the line about, yeah, she's a very beautiful woman. She has needs. It's like, yeah, she does. But why are you talking to her son about that? He's just like, kind of like, yeah, I'm going to drop this. It's like, you should have dropped it a long time ago. Once again, I said it last episode. I knew Alfie Super wasn't going to be okay with that. He's like, no, she isn't just a single woman. She's my mom. It's like, it's like, yeah, your mom deserves to be happy considering, and even she's like, yeah, like your dad, talking to Mr. P being like, yeah, you're the one that kind of left me. You had to be the hero. She's like, I bet you would want me to like, jump into the fire type of thing. So putting herself out there. But the problem is it wasn't a thing of like, oh, looking for something long term. The wording in it, he's like basically like, oh yeah, it's kind of like this is kind of like a Tinder hookup well before Tinder. That's what it was. He's like, oh, like, put on the rings. It's like, we could pretend to be, I guess because if it, just a woman and a guy meeting in a hotel room would seem shady, it would draw too much attention. So it's like, right, let's just pretend to be married. So we can go we had our tea, we chat. So like, let's go shag essentially. And she's like, oh, no, you pervert. She's like, leave me alone. Don't marry me or my son will put your head on a bloody pike. And it's just like, oh, you freaking pervert. It's like, yeah, the search for love continues. So we'll see. But I'm sure Alfie's going to have some questions for his mom soon enough. That Sandra situation sucked. Luckily, Alfie and Dave Boy got there in time, but it also sucks that that's why I was saying, like, yeah, it's going to come and screw them over because the fact is like, well, they were supposed to turn Jessica over, but they inadvertently had to kill her because she went on a full-blown killing spree. Like, so it also shows that this isn't like some targeted thing. It's like, oh no, once you activate the trigger, they're in kill mode until they've, I guess, killed everyone in the air. Because that's the thing. I guess she snapped out of it long enough to get to Alfred, but I guess it's like as long as the trigger's constantly active, then there's no stopping it. Like maybe it only stops when that person's away from the trigger. In this case, it wasn't until the song's about to get played, I'm like, oh my god, it's Sandra's song that's the trigger. It's like, oh, that sucks. But I guess it's like you want something that's readily available, that's playing like all the time. I mean, that also makes you go like, did this, which is weird to say, but you're like, did the CIA like make her song super popular just so that, like, did they just happen to randomly pick a song and they super pumped it up so that it would play a lot to act as a trigger? Or like, like how did that work? Like, did they know? Because it is such a popular song, people are going to be playing it all the time. Because it did seem like they were like, all right, activate it now. So it's like, not unless they were nearby playing the song to trigger her. But I would assume, like, the fact is it all happened in the house, that Jessica, like, the song was played in Jessica's house and maybe her parents played it or she did and that's what happened. But yeah, one full-blown killing spree. Killed everyone. Like, they made sure to show you, like, oh yeah, well, for one, everyone in that party's dead except for, Sandra, which I was kind of scared. I was like, they wouldn't do that, would they? And it's like, okay, luckily they didn't. And it's like, but they made sure to show you that Ian is dead. So it's like, poor bastard. That sucks. Literally everyone at that party died. And sadly, once again, they had to put down Jessica in the end too. So that super, super sucks. And especially at the end of it all, she's just the victim in all of this. She was used but that's the question. Why specifically her family? Did her family have some connections to the CIA? Do they have some... Well, like, they talked about the Thistles a little bit, but I don't know if there was, like, a government connection, because, like, why would the CIA specifically target Jessica's family? But it could just simply be, like, it was just a happenstance thing. Because they were testing it on a lot of people, and maybe she seemed the most receptive to it, and maybe that's why they really latched onto her. Maybe she's, like, the real, like, case study of it working, and maybe it wasn't as proficient with the rest of, was it the ashram, like Sister Susie's cult, or maybe it was always in relation to the Thistles, like there was some connection there. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where all this ends up taking us. Obviously, there's still another episode I need to get to, so I'm excited to see where all this takes us in episode 3. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.